Welcome back to Nobody is Doing It Right. I don't often do intros to my podcast, but I might as well do one now. My name is Kat. I'm sure you all know this. Welcome. Today's topic is going to be about being a bad person. And the way I wanted to frame this conversation is in relation, obviously, to personal growth and personal development. I think there is this kind of naive belief at times, which I fall into as well, so there's no shame or judgment here. The belief that at a certain point, if you do enough work on yourself, if you notice as many things about your behavior, your awareness, your attachments, whatever, you'll become a good person in this kind of holistic sense. When in reality, as I grow older, as I learn about life and experience life in its realness, you are always going to be the kind of bad person that you're trying to avoid being. And what I mean by that, I don't mean this in a negative way, as though there's no hope. What I mean is being bad in that sense is part of life, and it is part of your human experience. And also being good can't really exist without also knowing and experiencing what it means to be bad. Now, of course, I want to preface this by saying that the point of personal development and being aware of yourself and being intentional and all that stuff is to be better, to recognize the things that you're doing that you're not proud of or that make you feel kind of icky to do, or that are born of beliefs or ideologies that weren't yours to begin with. They were implanted in you by your family growing up or your culture, whatever, and changing, right? That is the point, of course. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you will probably make the same mistakes over and over again. You will probably do things that make you feel bad and icky and gross, and you'll look back and think, oh, I did that thing again. Or, I said something and in the moment it felt fine, but then afterwards you're like, oh, maybe that is actually that same type of unhealthy thinking that I once had. What I really want to emphasize as I've gone through my own journey and I'm still learning things is that there is no perfection to this process. There is no point that you're going to get to that you're going to be a perfect, good, in this kind of holistic sense, in almost like a godlike sense, good version or person, because it's not possible. And the point of this entire journey that you're on is not to get to a point where you are perfectly good, but rather a point where you can recognize your bad side and all the bad things you do and see them for what they are and acknowledge them and accept them and then change them when possible. I think when we try to force ourselves to look at things in this kind of binary, right? This black and white way of saying I'm either good or I'm bad. And if I do this thing, I'm bad. And if I avoid doing these things or I never do these things, I'm good. What really happens is, those parts of us that are messy and stupid and mean and gross and inappropriate, like those parts of us that do exist no matter what. It's going to be to different extremes and levels for different people, of course, but those exist within us. We can't avoid them. When we try to avoid them, we try to suppress them, what happens is we're not actually learning, right? We're not actually learning where they come from, why they're there, how to work with them, to be able to then be the kind of person we want to be in alignment with our values and morals while still having those parts of us exist. We're not actually using them to our benefit. We're trying to suppress them. We're trying to deny them. And what happens when anybody tries to deny those parts of themselves, as we've seen a lot of people who do this, who don't want to acknowledge or accept that they have bad in them, as we all do. We're all capable of it. What happens is they deny it and their ego takes over, right? They don't want to face the fact or accept the fact that they do bad things or they do wrong things or they're mean or they're inappropriate or they do something that hurts somebody. And so they'll deny it and they won't acknowledge it. They won't accept it. They won't apologize. They'll, live in the fantasy of I have done nothing wrong. I am all good. I am all this. And they won't be able to sit in the reality of who they are as a person, which is you're both bad and good. And understanding what that even means for you, what that looks like for you. And we see it all the time in people who I think now are commonly labeled narcissists, right? Not wanting to accept their flaws and imperfections. But I think even people who aren't necessarily narcissists can exhibit this because, again, it is scary to accept that you're not good all the time because we have this kind of very righteous culture, right? This mentality that we have to be all good, and if we're not, it's almost like a purity culture in a sense. I see it a lot online, and I think it can be very dangerous and detrimental to the human experience, right? There is a difference between the online content experience, right? Where, as an example, the work I do, when I present it, it's a very refined version of myself and a refined version of the lessons and experiences I've had, right? I'm putting them together in this little package, almost this creative package of words and videos and whatever else, and sharing it with someone. It is refined. It is me practicing my personal development. It is me putting together the version of it that is the most concise and clear. But to get to that point, I've had to make a lot of mistakes. I've had to do things that were not aligned with who I want to be. I've had to be a bad friend sometimes, not on purpose, of course, right? These are all, a lot of the times, unintentional, right? They're subconscious. They just happen. I've had to do all those things that I didn't like. I've had to be mean sometimes and aggressive, or let my anger take over. Like, of course. And then the parts we present online or in our work or wherever you're experiencing this, even if you're working with a therapist, right? You see them as this person who might be perfect because they've done so much work. It's like they're all human, right? So the behind that is a human being who is imperfect and bad while simultaneously being good, right? So I think it makes it tricky to try and suppress that stuff, try and avoid it by thinking that if I do enough personal development, if I do enough work, I will reach this point of being all good. And if I ever slip up, or I do something that makes me feel kind of gross or icky or uncomfortable, then I have to avoid it, and I can't admit it, or it makes me awful. And so what's the point of even trying anymore? Because obviously I'm not making any changes. That's not the point of this journey. The point is to get to a place where you can see yourself for what you actually are in all your depth and all your breadth, to see all of it, right? To really take inventory of all the parts of you. And while you can accept and acknowledge those bad parts of you, quote unquote, because, what does bad really mean? But let's say bad in the sense of all the things that you don't want to be, but they're still there within you. To accept them, to acknowledge them, doesn't mean you have to let them take over, right? And lean into them, which some people do, right? Some people who want to, it's almost ironic, right? They don't want to accept that they're bad. So instead of trying to work on it or accept it and be humbled by it, they lean more into it because it's almost like this demand avoidance kind of. You don't have to let it take over. It doesn't have to be all of you. And neither does the good part, right? It is all part of who you are as a person. And I think it can be kind of detrimental to the journey, to the intention behind this journey, to think that you have to be all good or all bad. And I say this as someone who I still struggle with this, right? I see my perfectionism creep in as I do this work. And, I write about things where it's like, yes, of course, I understand this topic. I understand this idea and this concept because I can write about it in depth, and I can write about it in a way that is exemplifying the, I guess, quote unquote, best version of me and the person I want to be. And yet I can still sometimes slip back into patterns that are not good. It doesn't mean, though, that is totally who I am. It doesn't mean that all the work I do is wrong or fake, or I think the imposter syndrome can kick in too for anybody who's dealing with this, right? You do all this work, you try to be better, you are showing up in different ways, and you're seeing progress, right? You're seeing growth, but then you slip back and you see a part of you that you thought wasn't there anymore, that was fixed or whatever. And you think, oh, so basically I'm just an imposter. I'm still the same person I always was, and I'm not changing. And it's like, no, that you are. The fact that you can even recognize it for what it is part of the journey. It is part of the growth. And so you have to kind of still accept that you are, just as much as you are a good person in the ways that you're trying to be, you're also a bad person, because that is the human experience. We are both, right? It's the yin and yang. We need both within us to even understand, what good is. We have to know what our bad is so that we can then be good and do the things that we know are more aligned with what we think is good. So we have to be able to see those parts of ourselves. So if we were just perfectly good all the time, then it wouldn't really be good, because it wouldn't be in contrast to bad. But also, if we were trying to deny those bad parts of ourselves, we wouldn't actually do the things we need to do to be good, because we wouldn't even be accepting the parts that are bad. We would try to ignore them and not see them. And that's not healthy either, because then you are not seeing the things within you that you know are not aligned with your values and morals. And so you'll probably do things that are not aligned with your values and morals because you're not recognizing what that even looks like. So I think it's really important to let ourselves be bad, right? I've written about this so many times, but I think it's very pertinent now. I'm seeing more of this online, where this kind of policing of morality, which of course, it's good to hold people accountable. That's the point of relationships too. Like, we're supposed to be in relationships where we do something bad or uncomfortable or shitty or whatever to a friend or to whoever, and that person calls us out or tells us or holds us accountable in some way, maybe with their reaction to it. And instead of denying that, we should be able to sit in that and say, oh yeah, I did something that was not good, or I don't like it, or, maybe you felt justified in the moment because it was like a heat of a passion. And then after, you can look back and say, okay, yes, it felt good to express this part of me, but like, is that who I want to be all the time? Is that what I want to carry forward? It's just about awareness at the end of the day, and this isn't even to say that there are, objectively bad things to do, because bad it's what you think that is, right? Everybody has a different idea, different threshold for it. Who am I to say what is or what isn't, right? It's about you understanding what that means for you and the kind of person you want to be. And, of course, if it hurts other people, we don't want to do that. That should maybe be the baseline to it. But, the nuances, the intricacies of it are for you to decide. But yeah, I think understanding that that's there, that's gonna be there. So if you notice yourself slipping back into things that make you feel that way, it's like, that's, yes, of course, you're not doing anything wrong. Yes, you might do something that you don't align with, but it's the fact that you're still experiencing those bad, quote unquote, parts of you doesn't mean you're doing this journey wrong if you're being aware of it and you're taking note of it and trying to consciously change it. That is part of the journey. That is the point of all of this. It's not about getting to a point where you're perfect now. You're almost like a saint. That's impossible. So to even strive for that is silly. And to think that, to even judge yourself for that is going to make you then project it onto other people, which won't be healthy for your relationships either, because then you'll look at other people who make mistakes and think, well, see, they're a bad person. It's like, well, you also do those things, but you might then deny it or suppress it within yourself because you're living in this paradigm of perfection when it comes to your personal development or your just sense of self. And that's not healthy either. So I do think, compassion is really important. Compassion towards yourself and towards others when it comes to these parts of us that are imperfect and bad, because that's going to be there. Whether you like it or not, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to be bad. You're going to be wrong. You're going to be all these things that you don't want to be. You might as well accept it. Again, you don't have to, accept it fully and let it take over, but you have to allow it to exist and decide what you're going to do. Right? It's in the decision then that you become the person you need to be. And sometimes we make decisions that aren't great, but it's about then correcting them, right? It's the course correction. And life is just a series of pivots and course corrections. And that's the point of it. It's, almost more about how willing you are to course correct rather than how perfect you are or how good you are and how many points you can collect of goodness, That's unrealistic, and it doesn't feel good to exist in that. And I wanted to emphasize that because with my work, again, it's a refined version of me and the journey I'm on, because it's the work, right? Like I'm presenting it in a way that is understandable for others. I've taken time to really understand it for myself. So what I'm putting out is the most refined version of myself within this realm of my life. I have other realms of my life that aren't as refined, and so I think sometimes when people perceive me online, they might perceive me as being in this realm of perfection when it comes to growth and improvement, as though I've somehow mastered being an amazing, perfect person. I haven't. Like, part of the work I do is me. It's in the process of me trying my best to be better. Like, that is the work I'm doing. It's actually helping me within this process. It's not a reflection of the fact that I've hit this level of perfection. It is me working through it alongside other people who are also working through it. And I'm just sharing it. Because I think I was doing a live maybe a couple of weeks ago, and a comment was left that they perceive me as a good person. And well, I love that. Yes, thank you. I try my best. I try my best to be as good as I can be for myself and the kind of person I want to be. At the same time, though, it's like, you perceiving me as good, like, what does that mean? Because at the end of the day, I'm gonna be a fully rounded person. I am a fully rounded person who's not always going to be good. And so to perceive me in this way, I worry is going to make people think that there is a level of perfect good that you can achieve based on the work I do and the way you're perceiving me. The work I do is born from a lot of imperfection, a lot of messiness, a lot of badness in many ways. Again, I try my best to be as aligned with my values and morals. My values and morals have always been there. Badness is going to look different for every person depending on their values and morals. So, when I say bad, I'm meaning it within the scope of what I think bad is in terms of the kind of person I want to be, So that's going to exist. All of my work is born from that. So what you're seeing and perceiving maybe as this ultimate good version of me, perfection, or hitting all the elements of personal development that make you a great person now. All of that has come from the flip side, right? The dark side, which is all the things I've had to go through and do and experience to understand the lessons that I've learned. So I hope that makes sense. I wanted to really talk about this because I fear that some people might think, especially maybe even my younger audience, might think that there's a point in which after you work enough and develop yourself enough, you'll be fully good and you'll never have to be ashamed or embarrassed or whatever about yourself because you've done something now that's bad or what you consider bad. You probably will, and that's okay because that is part of being human. The human brain is so complex and so intricate, and there are so many caverns and doors and basements and so many things within the human brain that are not controllable all the time. You can do your best and understand as much as you can about yourself, your psyche, your wounds, your behaviors, of course. But there are parts of you that you won't always be able to, and that's okay. And that's actually unavoidable. Like there's no way to really change that. And that's fine. That is part of being human. I think I want to emphasize that you're human and you're going to be imperfect. And that's part of being human. And so it's not about denying that part of yourself. It's about acknowledging it, accepting it, and then deciding, okay, what am I going to do with this knowledge now? It's not about shaming yourself or making it worse for yourself because that's not going to make you want to change or improve. It might, but it's not going to be coming from a healthy place. It's going to be coming from a shame-based place. Maybe even a toxic shame-based place, Shame itself, yes, can be a good motivator at times because you don't want to feel that way again. But if you do it all the time when you make these mistakes, it's like after a while, it's going to feel very overwhelming to then do what you need to do to change, to grow and improve. Like sometimes you just have to show yourself compassion and say, yeah, I did that thing again. I didn't like it. It was stupid. It was inappropriate, whatever. I'm not going to dwell on it more than I need to because I need to make change, right? I need to take action now. And I think sometimes we can get stuck in the overthinking, the ruminating, the over-shaming ourselves that prevents us then from doing what we need to do with intention. So I think that's the point of this podcast episode, that there is an intention to being able to recognize your badness and accepting it for what it is and moving on and keeping it pushing, right? We don't want to get stuck in that part of ourselves, in that dark part of ourselves, because that's not going to benefit anybody. It's really not. Like you can only ruminate about something you've done, a mistake you've made, whatever, for so long. And then the point is to get back up and try again and do better next time, as better as you can, whatever that means. You might have to make the mistake again a few times before it really solidifies within you and you actually understand, like, okay, this is what I need to do to not do this again, right? Again, the journey is different for everybody. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it was a bit encouraging. Like if you're on your journey now and you're worrying about how you're still making the same mistakes, you're still doing the same things, you're not showing up as best as you can be or how you want to be, I hope this was encouraging and supportive and just giving you a little bit of a relief about this, because it's not about perfection. It's about just getting to a point where you feel okay and like you're in alignment with, in some way in alignment with the kind of person you want to be, even though you recognize that you're still doing things that you wish, you could be perfect at. You won't ever be. So now what? Like, that's the point now. What do I do now, knowing that I'm going to always be in some way bad because I'm not perfect? What does that mean moving forward? What can I do? How can I show myself some compassion so that I can do better? So yeah, I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. If you want to work with me one-to-one and talk about these things in more depth, feel free to book a call on my website. As I always say, I'm not a therapist. I just love talking about these things. You can also follow me on Substack, where I write about these things a lot, and also find my short form content over on Instagram and TikTok. Other than that, thank you for being here, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.